Texas. Let's go to our tropical weather expert, John Hope, for an update. John?
Well, thank you, Nick, and good evening, everyone. We're glad to have you with us. Yes, the eye of Hurricane Bret has come ashore. It's done that in South Texas at a point in Kennedy County, far or quite a ways away, actually, from Corpus Christi, about 70 miles, and about 60 miles north of Brownsville. So it was very fortunate that it came in an area that was not very densely populated at all. We were a little concerned about the metropolitan areas for a while, but now that the hurricane has come this far south, we know that we're a whole lot better off. Let's go ahead and take a general look now at the tropics. We wanted to show you we do have a couple other entities to talk about. One of them is our erstwhile hurricane. This is Cindy, and now down to a tropical storm, still not looking terribly well organized. Have a pretty good impulse coming off Africa, and then we have another disturbance which causes us a bit of concern here around Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and the northern leewards. That's going to be monitored for possible development. Well, let's go to Bret now and give you the latest information we have at 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time, centered at 26.9, 97.4. That's 60 miles south of Corpus Christi, Texas. Winds down to 125 miles an hour. The barometric pressure up to 952 millibars. What we're seeing is each time the reconnaissance folks get out there and give us central pressure, the pressure comes up a little bit, and of course, as you know, that's indicative of a weakening hurricane. Nevertheless, we still have out hurricane warnings from La Pesca in Mexico up to Port O'Connor in Texas, and north of Port O'Connor to Freeport, we have out tropical storm warnings for that area. As we look at our satellite picture here, just as it's moving in, you can see at this point the eye is half on and half off, but it certainly now can be said to have made landfall. This is Baffin Bay here, just to the south of Baffin Bay, and it's moving off just about west, maybe a tad north of west. On our radar, we can see the same scenario where half the eye is out over the water and half of it now is over land. This very potent western eye wall has moved inland, and the maximum storm surge associated with this, which might be as high as 15 feet or so, is right where the north eye wall is coming ashore. That's over Padre Island. We haven't had any confirmations there. We have 54 miles an hour gusts now at Harlingen. These seem a little low from some of the reports that we're hearing about up around Corpus Christi. Well, to get back to Cindy for just a moment, the wind's now 65 miles an hour. It's 580 miles west of the Cape Verde Islands. That's 1,500 or so miles east of the Caribbean Sea. It doesn't look as if it's going to make a very quick comeback. If it does, it still looks mighty ragged, so it's going to be held, I'm sure, now as a tropical storm. And here's another pretty potent wave that's just come off the coast of Africa. And finally, I wanted to discuss this feature a little bit here in the Caribbean Sea and Puerto Rico right here, the Virgin Islands there, the northern leewards. Pretty good complex of showers there, not getting gathered up, but we have a high in the upper atmosphere. We think conditions are favorable for that to develop some. As
tropical storm warning, the tropical storm warning from
the overnight hours, attention is focused on the threat of severe weather and flooding. There have been reports of tornadoes. Hello, I'm Terry Smith, and welcome to this special edition of Weather Center. I'll have the nation's weather and Monday's forecast, but first, the latest on Hurricane Bret. Here's Dave Schwartz in the Forecast Center.
Thank you, Terry. It's been a wild weekend in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico as a tropical depression developed Wednesday afternoon, then became a tropical storm Thursday. By Friday night, it was a hurricane, and last night at this time, it was a Category 4 hurricane. And that scale runs from 1 to 5. Now it's a Category 3 hurricane. It's moved on shore. It's causing problems. These are the latest data. Hurricane Bret, 10 o'clock Central Daylight Time. Information from the National Hurricane Center. Winds 115 miles per hour. Movement to the west at 7 miles per hour. The winds will die down. The slow movement will cause flooding. That's the major problem. But wind is still an issue. Kristen Dodd is standing by live in Kingsville, Texas. Kristen, can you hear me at all?
I certainly can, but it is difficult. These are the strongest winds that we have experienced here in Kingsville in Hurricane Bret. We have had recorded gusts of over 60 miles an hour now, and you can see that it is really difficult to just stand, especially then with the rain now coming into my faces. The eye wall of Hurricane Bret is now just 18 miles due south of where we are standing right now. So we expect to see some very strong winds continuing here within the next several minutes. And again, these are the strongest winds that we have experienced all night long. We also are seeing very heavy downpours, and we can continue to see those throughout the nighttime hours. This area is under a flood warning. We do have reports of flooding along State Road 77. Water is now crossing that roadway, and reports just to the south of us as much as 3.5 inches of rain per hour now falling. Now here's a look at what it looked like in Kingsville earlier today with some of the damage that the stronger winds and rain has been doing around the city. We do have reports of numerous power lines that were down here and also in several of the smaller communities that are lying just between here and about 20 miles to our south. Those small communities are now feeling the full force of the eye wall as it is now crossing across that region. I'm sure some scary moments for folks who did not evacuate from that area. We'll continue to monitor the situation here from Kingsville throughout the night. Dave, back to you.
Okay, thanks, Kristen, for that live report. And get inside. Be safe. We don't want anything flying around in the wind air. Thanks for that live report. Well, there are very few people that I saw in the background, and I hope that if you are in Kingsville or in Corpus Christi or elsewhere in the south coast of Texas, that you are holding out here tonight inside. And make sure that you have battery-operated flashlights, radios, whatever, because as we've seen, the wind is still howling up at Corpus Christi, gusting to 50 miles per hour. In addition to this, as a hurricane comes on shore, tornadoes are a threat, and at night, they're an extra threat. Most of the tornadoes will occur in the right front quadrant of the hurricane. That's in advance of the eye and to the right front of the storm track as you look in the direction the storm is headed. In the case of a hurricane headed northwest, the tornadoes are most common north of the center. Tornadoes usually occur in the outer rain bands, 100 to 250 miles from the center of the eye. Hurricane-spawned tornadoes usually don't last very long and are often not very intense, but they're strong enough to tear the roof off from your house. Perhaps most important, they develop quickly with little or no warning. So be very careful here tonight in the area where the eye has moved on shore in Kennedy County and then northward into Nueces and San Patricio County up to Refugio and B County. A tornado watch remains in effect. For some expert analysis on our most intense hurricane to hit the Gulf Coast since Opal back in 1995, here's senior weather expert Stu Ostro.
Thank you, Dave. And as evidenced by the pictures that Kristen was showing us just a moment ago, folks should not think that just because the eye has come on shore that the threat is over. This is still a very dangerous hurricane, and even those communities that are a bit inland will be experiencing those very strong winds as well as extremely heavy rains and the threat of tornadoes. Let's look at the satellite photo, which shows us where the hurricane is right now. We do see that it has diminished in time on this appearance on the satellite photo as well as the observations that we've been getting, but still a very well-defined eye that's moved just inland. We have the very strong winds rotating around counterclockwise, so we still have big waves being generated, the threat of coastal flooding along the coast, and the extremely heavy rainfall that is going along with the winds. Here we can see Kingsville, and we can see some of these heavy squalls that are rotating through. We have one band which is now pushed a pretty good distance north of Corpus Christi, and then we have the extremely heavy rain and wind in the eye wall, which continues to push on to the west-northwest, and more feeder bands rotating around from over the ocean. We do still have hurricane warnings in effect from Brownsville to Port Aransas, and tropical storm warnings a little bit farther up the coast from Port Aransas to Port O'Connor. Dave, you talked about the tornadoes. We do have a tornado watch in effect, and they do typically spin up very quickly during hurricanes, not last very long. It's tough to warn for them, and it's certainly tough to see them at night as well. These are the wind gusts that have been reported recently, 49, 36 miles per hour up here, in the 30s down here, although keep in mind, for one thing, a lot of these are inland, and it's not reflective of what's going on in the barrier islands, and also we don't have any reporting stations right where the worst winds are in the core of the hurricane. Now, as we go through time, this graphic that we've shown last night that has the high impact of both wind, rain, wave, and surge will be changing now that it's coming on. The wind will gradually be coming down, the waves and surge gradually be coming down, but for now, still all in the high zone, and the rain will continue to be a problem perhaps for as long as a couple of days. This is a slow